At a family dinner that was supposed to unite us, my sister-in-law suddenly shot to her feet, pointed straight at me and screamed, "You stole my wallet, you filthy thief." The room froze. I said I didn't touch anything, but she smirked, walked right to the bag beside my chair and pulled her wallet out like she was unveiling a crime scene. "See, I knew it was you," she sneered, savoring every second of it. Every eye in that room pinned me to my seat, and I did the only thing I could. I laughed. Because if I didn't laugh, I think I would have shattered. My name is Orion, and what happened that night didn't just expose a lie, it exposed everything my family had been trying to hide from me. But before I share my story with you, I want to know you're here with me. Just say "listening" in the comments or tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far my story can reach. Sometimes even the smallest connection can make a story feel heard. Thank you. And now, here's my story. And if this kind of truth-from-the-heart storytelling means something to you, please consider subscribing to the channel. It helps more than you know, and it tells me I'm not sharing these moments alone. The room went dead silent the moment Brielle screamed. 1 second, Carol was setting down a fresh peach pie, the smell of cinnamon filling the Lane family dining room. The next, Brielle stood at the far end of the table, face-flushed, voice slicing through every conversation. "My wallet is gone," she announced, then locked her eyes on me. "You stole it, you filthy thief." I felt every head turn. My mom stiffened beside me. Ray paused, her hand frozen on her wheelchair armrest. Harper's eyes flicked between me and her sister, trying to decode what was happening. This was supposed to be our engagement dinner, both families meeting officially for the first time, not a crime scene. The Lane house in Cedar Park was warm and cluttered, full of childhood photos of Harper and Brielle. I'd spent the meal trying to blend into that warmth, chatting with Raymond about cars, helping Carol pass dishes, letting Harper calm my nerves by nudging my leg under the table. Even the tension coming off Brielle all night, the way she kept glancing my way, hadn't prepared me for this. She lifted her bag dramatically. It was right here, and now it's gone. Then she moved too fast, too confidently, to the tote bag under the chair beside me. Ray's bag. The bag Ray couldn't reach without help. Before I could speak, Brielle plunged her hand in and pulled out a sleek wallet. Her wallet. "See," she said, savoring every syllable. "I knew it." Carol gasped. Raymond dropped his fork. Someone muttered something under their breath. My mom went pale. "That's not my bag," I managed. But the words sounded small compared to the shame Brielle had just thrown at me. And then the past hit me all at once, my mom crying in our old South Austin kitchen over debt notices my father left behind, the hospital bills after Ray's accident, the warning she drilled into me for years. People like us don't survive accusations. Not even false ones. The humiliation, the shock, the sheer absurdity of it, it all cracked open inside me. And before I could stop it, a laugh slipped out. Sharp, wrong, but real. The entire table stared at me. Brielle's expression twisted. "What's so funny?" I looked at Ray's tote, the tote Brielle had somehow known to search. I looked at the woman who had spent months cornering me into lunches I paid for, hinting about money issues, sizing me up like I was some easy mark. This moment didn't begin tonight, and if anyone was ever going to understand why I laughed instead of breaking, I had to take them back to the beginning. I had to tell the part before the engagement, before the dinners, before Brielle ever said my name. I grew up in a cramped apartment in South Austin, where the walls were thin and money was even thinner. My mom, Elaine, worked 2 teaching jobs, grading papers until midnight. My dad walked out when I was 7, leaving behind nothing but debts and a landlord banging on the door for payments. Then came the accident. Ray was 10 when an SUV ran a red light and sent our car spinning. She survived, but her spine didn't. I still remember my mom sitting in a hospital chair staring at a bill she could never afford. From that day, everything in our life rearranged around a wheelchair and survival. That's why I started working early. Late shifts, pizza delivery, anything that could help. That's why I went into data analysis. Numbers made sense. Life didn't. Lone Star Mutual Insurance became my first real foothold in stability. And then Harper walked into my life. She was my supervisor, sharp, steady, raised by hard-working parents in Cedar Park. We bonded during late-night crunch sessions over half-warm noodles and messy spreadsheets. She didn't pity me when I told her about my dad or Ray. She listened. She shared her own scars. And little by little trust grew between us. I proposed under a live oak tree near Lady Bird Lake. My hand shook, but my voice didn't when I promised her I wouldn't run from the hard parts of life the way my father did. She said yes, and promised we'd build a different kind of family, one without lies, especially about money. For a while, everything felt possible. Then Harper mentioned Brielle. Not dramatically, not as a warning, just carefully. She's complicated, Harper said. Just be polite. And maybe don't tell her too much about finances. I laughed at the time. Everyone has a messy sibling, right? But then I saw Harper step onto my balcony after receiving a text from Brielle whispering words like, "Late fee card you promised." She came back in smiling too brightly, insisting she'd handle it. She told me bits and pieces over time, the college credit card debt Brielle hid, the time their parents bailed her out of a lawsuit she almost triggered, the job she lost because the company was downsizing. Except Harper eventually admitted that wasn't the truth. There had been missing money, a register discrepancy, a quiet agreement letting Brielle resign if she promised not to fight it. She just makes bad choices, Harper said. My parents can't know, they'd break. That was the first time I felt something tighten in my chest, a warning, faint but real. Because the woman in those stories, she was the same woman who stood tonight in her parents' dining room calling me a thief. And as I looked at Ray's tote bag, the one Brielle claimed held evidence, I finally understood something Harper had only hinted at. Brielle didn't just make bad choices. She made calculated ones. And tonight, she had made me her target. I still remember the first time I stepped into the Lane house as Harper's fiancée. It was a warm Saturday afternoon in Cedar Park. Sunlight slanting across the driveway, the front door already open like they'd been waiting for us. I carried a pie and flowers, trying not to look like someone who'd rehearsed how to say hello. Raymond shook my hand like I'd earned a spot in the family. Carol kept calling me son while stirring something on the stove. For a kid raised in an apartment with peeling walls and overdue notices taped to the fridge, the whole scene felt unreal. A couple of weeks later, Harper arranged a dinner so our families could meet. Mom and Ray came with me. Ray maneuvered her wheelchair up the walkway while Raymond rushed to help. Carol knelt beside Ray, asking about her design work with genuine interest. For most of the evening, it felt like a family I could belong to, except for the empty chair at the far end, the one reserved for Brielle. She arrived 40 minutes late, heels echoing on the tile, perfume hitting the room before she did. "Traffic is insane," she announced, dropping her bag like she was stepping onto a stage. Her eyes went straight to me. "So you're Orion. Where do you work? You make decent money." The smile she gave me was the kind people wear when they're choosing the next thing to take. At the end of the night, she slid into the seat beside me. "Give me your number," she said. "You and I need bonding time. I'll show you all the spots Harper never goes to." With Harper smiling across the table, I didn't know how to refuse. That was the beginning. The first brunch she invited me to was at a trendy place in the Domain. When the bill came, she gasped dramatically. "My wallet. I left it at home. Can you get this? I'll Venmo you." I didn't think twice. The second time on a rooftop cafe, my card isn't working. I paid again. By the fourth time, I started keeping notes in my phone. The amounts added up, and so did my discomfort. But bringing it up felt like picking a fight with the woman whose parents had just welcomed my family with open arms. So I swallowed it and dodged her texts when I could. One evening after dinner, I went to wash my hands at the restaurant. From the next stall, I heard Brielle's voice, low, tense. "I know the account is negative. He can't sue me, right? I don't have the money this week." Something in my gut tightened. Lawsuits. Overdrafts. The same words that haunted my childhood. When she came out, she was smiling again, telling me she'd pay for parking. She didn't. Later that night, Harper stepped onto the balcony after a call. Through the glass, I could see worry etched across her face. "It's Brielle," she said when she returned. "Money problems again. I'll handle it." When I asked how, she only said, "Just, please be patient with her. Don't start a fight." I didn't argue. But when my phone buzzed with a text from Brielle, "Brunch this weekend, I have exciting news," I let it sit unread for the first time. I didn't know that pulling back would be the one thing she refused to tolerate. The confrontation happened on a Friday just after work when downtown Austin glowed with that late sunset warmth. Harper and I walked out of Lone Star Mutual talking about wedding plans, nothing heavy, nothing stressful, until I spotted Brielle leaning against a streetlight near the parking garage. She wasn't surprised to see us. She was waiting. "Look at you two," she said, her tone sugary and sharp, leaving work together like a power couple. Harper stiffened. I could feel it. Brielle walked toward us, coffee in hand. "Anyway, I need a favor. I've got an event tonight and I'm short on cash. Spot me a few hundred." This time I didn't hesitate. "No, you haven't paid me back for anything." Her expression cracked, then hardened. "Seriously, you're counting brunch? That's pathetic." Then leaning closer, "You only have money because you're riding Harper's salary, right?" Harper stepped in. "That's enough, Brielle. You owe him. Stop acting like we're your personal ATM." "So you're picking him over me?" Brielle snapped. "I'm picking what's right," Harper said. It was the first clean line in the sand. Brielle's eyes narrowed. "You think he's so perfect, I'll make sure everyone knows what he's really like." The threat landed like ice in my stomach. I didn't yell. I didn't react. But I felt something shift. She hadn't just been using me. She'd been waiting for a moment to break me. Over the next couple of days, the unease kept gnawing, so I reached out to Derek, a guy who used to work with Brielle at her old hotel job. When we met, he hesitated at first, then said quietly, "Money went missing a few times. Tips register totals. Nothing proven, but everyone knew something was off." She was asked to resign. It wasn't downsizing. I wasn't shocked, but I was shaken. The pattern was too clear. That night I told Harper. She closed her eyes for a long moment. "I spent years trying to protect her," she whispered, "but every time someone covers for her, she just pushes further." I put an arm around her. "I want to support you, but I can't let her drag us under." Harper nodded, forehead resting on my shoulder. "I'm scared of what she'll do next." Neither of us realized the answer was coming faster than we thought. Within days, both families would sit at that long wooden table again, and Brielle would walk in already armed with a plan, one she'd been building long before the night she screamed that I was a thief. The week before the engagement dinner felt strangely heavy, even though everything on the surface looked normal. Harper and I were prepping gifts for her parents, deciding which dishes my mom would bring, arranging rides for Ray. It should have been simple joy, but something kept pressing at the back of my mind like pressure before a storm. One afternoon, while we were folding napkins for the dinner Ray mentioned casually, Brielle came by earlier. She stood behind me for a bit, messed with my chair like she was adjusting it, and bumped my tote a few times. I froze. Ray brushed it off. Maybe she's just stressed about the wedding, but I knew better. Brielle had never cared about anything involving my convenience. Then Brielle's sudden kindness started. Messages every day. "Orion, I'll bring pie for the dinner. Orion, I want the night to be perfect for you." This was the same woman who sighed whenever I walked into a room. The change made my stomach tighten. Harper tried to reassure me, saying, maybe she's trying to make things right, but neither of us believed it fully. And then I remembered something Brielle told me during brunch weeks earlier. "My wallet's been stolen twice. People are awful." I hadn't thought twice about it, but now it replayed in my head like a line dropped on purpose. Harper grew tense too. She kept sighing, rubbing her temples. When I asked what was wrong, she just said, "Just promise you'll stay on my side, no matter what happens." The way she said it chilled me. The night before the dinner at almost 11, I received a call from an unknown number. When I answered, a man's voice said, "You're Orion, right? I'm Evan, her ex-husband." There was no emotion in his tone, just a warning. Be careful. She doesn't need a reason to ruin someone. And once she starts, she doesn't stop. Before I could ask anything, the line went dead. I didn't tell Harper. She had enough on her plate. The final sign arrived the next morning. "Orion, tonight I hope you behave like a real future brother-in-law." It read like a threat wrapped in etiquette. Driving to Cedar Park that evening with Mom and Ray, I tried to shake it off. I forced light conversation, joked about wedding playlists, but my mind kept circling back to Evan's call and Harper's earlier warning. When we stepped through the lane front door, Brielle was already seated front center, positioned like someone collecting reactions. She didn't smile at me. She just watched. As I sat down, I noticed her glance once at the tote bag resting beside Ray's chair, the smallest flick of her eyes so quick I almost missed it. I didn't understand it yet, but I would. Dinner began peacefully enough. Carol circulated with serving spoons, Raymond told a story about a misfiring engine at the garage, and my mom answered polite questions about her years teaching middle school. Harper kept giving me small smiles, trying to hold the night together. Even Ray chimed in with jokes about difficult clients and weird design requests. Only Brielle stayed quiet, watching, waiting. Every time I glanced her way, she was already looking at me. At one point, she slipped away from the table, claiming she needed to grab something from the kitchen. When I happened to look over my shoulder, I caught a glimpse of her standing behind Ray's chair, bending down as if adjusting it. I thought nothing of it at the time. I should have. Carol had just set the pie down when Brielle strode back into the room, face flushed, breathing hard. My wallet is gone. Chairs scraped. Voices stopped mid-sentence. It was right here, she continued, pointing at her bag. And now it's missing. Her gaze locked onto me. Funny how things disappear when you're around. I tried to stay calm. You're misunderstanding. She didn't let me finish. You stole my wallet, you filthy thief. My mom inhaled sharply. Harper froze, eyes wide with hurt and confusion. Even Raymond looked stunned. Before anyone could speak, Brielle moved to the tote bag beside my chair, Ray's bag, and reached inside with a confidence that made my skin crawl. She pulled out her designer wallet and held it high like she'd recovered evidence from a crime scene. See, I knew it was him. My mom turned pale. Raymond muttered something under his breath. Carol covered her mouth. Harper stared at me, searching for any sign this was a misunderstanding. Something inside me cracked, not from guilt, but from the absurdity of it all. Months of lunches, the bathroom phone call, the sudden friendliness, Evan's warning. And now her wallet was in the one bag belonging to the person least able to defend themselves. I laughed. It wasn't joyful. It was disbelief spilling out in the only form my body could manage. Brielle whipped around. What's so funny, Orion? Before I could answer, Ray's voice cut through the tension. Clear, steady, unshakable. That's my bag, she said. And I haven't moved an inch all night. Every eye turned to her. Ray continued. Brielle stood behind me earlier. She covered the bag with her jacket. That wallet didn't just appear there. Brielle blanched, lips parting as if she'd been slapped. That's not, I didn't. Harper stood then, palms pressed against the table. Enough, she said. I've watched you borrow money from him for months. I've listened to your lies. And now you're framing him. In front of both families. Brielle exploded, voice cracking. He's using you. He thinks he's better than us. No, Harper said, shaking her head slowly. You're the one hurting this family. And you tried to drag him down with you. The room fractured into noise, Carol demanding answers. Raymond trying to calm everyone, my mom wiping her eyes, relatives whispering like a wave rolling through the house. I looked at Ray. She met my gaze and gave the smallest nod, steady, protective, the same look she used to give me from her hospital bed years ago. She had saved me. But even as the truth began to surface, I knew this wasn't over. Brielle hadn't just made a scene. She had come into this night with a plan, and people who plan like that rarely stop after their first attempt. For a moment after Ray spoke, the whole room froze. You could hear the clock ticking in the hallway, the faint hum of the fridge. Brielle was still standing with her wallet in her hand, face drained of color. I stayed seated, palms flat on the table, forcing myself not to flinch. Raymond was the first to move. He cleared his throat, but his voice came out rough. Explain it, Brielle. How did your wallet end up in Ray's bag? Carol's hands shook as she set her coffee cup down. You just called your future brother-in-law a thief in front of both families, she said quietly. You better have more than drama to back that up. For the first time since I'd known them, they weren't automatically on her side. Brielle's eyes darted between us. He had time, she snapped, pointing at me. You all saw him sitting right there. He could have reached down when no one was looking. I'm just the only one willing to say what's obvious. She shifted tactics, almost mid-sentence, voice going high and wounded. You always believe everyone else over me, she said to her parents. I was trying to protect Harper. Nobody else seems to care who she marries. Harper's straightened shoulders squared. No, she said. You weren't protecting me. You were trying to destroy him. And I'm done pretending otherwise. She looked around the table, then back at her parents. You all need to hear the rest, she said, because this didn't start tonight. Harper told them about the late-night calls, the overdue cards, the borrowed money that never came back. Then she took a breath and nodded at me. Tell them, she said. All of it. So I did. I kept my voice steady, listing places and dates like I was reading a report. The brunch in the Domain, the rooftop drinks on Rainy, the forgot my wallet, the card that wouldn't swipe the promised transfers that never appeared. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't add emotion. I just laid down the pattern. One of Harper's uncles shifted uncomfortably. No one spoke up to defend Brielle. She laughed, then loud and brittle. You seriously keep records of brunch like some kind of accountant, she said. That's pathetic. You're using my sister for her salary and whining about a couple of meals. If I were using her, I said quietly, I wouldn't be the one worried about a few $100 I don't actually have to spare. Harper turned to her parents. Her voice shook, but she didn't look away. There's more, she said. About her job at the hotel. She swallowed. She didn't leave because of downsizing. There was money missing, cash, tips. Management didn't want a scandal, so they let her resign quietly. I helped spin the story so you wouldn't know. Raymond stared at her like he was seeing his daughter for the first time. Is that true? He asked, though he already knew the answer. Carol's lips trembled. We believed every word she told us, she whispered. Brielle slammed her palm on the table. There was no proof, she shouted. They were jealous, that's all. You're really going to drag that up now? I leaned forward slightly. Last night I said your ex-husband called me. Evan. He didn't give details, he just said, be careful. She doesn't need a good reason to ruin someone. Then he hung up. Raymond turned slowly toward his eldest. What did you do to that man, he asked, that he felt the need to warn a stranger about you? Brielle's jaw clenched. She didn't answer. Silence settled again, heavier this time. Finally, Raymond pushed his chair back. When he spoke, his voice was tired but firm. This isn't a misunderstanding, he said. You didn't make a mistake. You set someone up. Carol wiped her eyes. If you needed money, you could have told us, she said. But framing him. Using Ray's bag. That's not desperation. That's cruelty. They didn't yell. They just laid down terms. You're going to pay Orion back, Raymond said. Every dollar. You're going to apologize. And you're not staying here tonight. Your mother and I need space to figure out how, or if we can help you going forward. Brielle stared at them like she'd been slapped. You're all under his spell, she spat, turning to me. You're lucky your crippled sister was here. If she could walk, no one would have believed her. Ray's voice cut through again, cool and sharp. The only reason this worked, she said, is because I couldn't move. You counted on that. It's the one thing you didn't think through. Brielle's eyes flashed. She grabbed her bag, shoved her chair back so hard it scraped the floor, and stormed out. The front door slammed a second later. The house exhaled. Raymond looked at me across the table. I am so sorry, son, he said. You didn't deserve any of that. Carol reached for my mom's hand. I'm ashamed of what she did in this house, she said softly. I looked at Harper and Ray, at my mom, at the wreckage on the table. I'd survived the accusation, but what I'd just watched was a family losing the version of their daughter they'd held on to for years. I thought that might be the end of it. I was wrong. The days after the dinner felt strangely quiet. No screaming, no accusations, just a kind of grief hanging over everything. Raymond and Carol called my mom and me twice more just to apologize, even though I'd already told them they didn't have to. They said Brielle hadn't come home that night. She'd sent a few angry texts about betrayal, about everyone taking his side, but no apology. Inside their house, they said it felt like a funeral. Not for a person, but for the version of Brielle they'd been trying to believe in. Raymond finally told her over the phone that if she wanted any help from them again, she had to start by paying me back. At first, she scoffed, said she was broke, said it was just brunch. He didn't budge. "You want a fresh start?" he said. "You make this right." A few days later, my banking app lit up with a string of small transfers. Different amounts, different times, all from Brielle. When I added them up, the total matched the list in my phone almost exactly. The note on the last one said, "Here, happy now, no apology. Just numbers." Harper and I met Evan at a coffee shop downtown the next weekend. He looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. He told us about the marriage, about credit cards maxed out on clothes, and clubs about money pulled from their joint account, without a word about lies layered on top of lies until he didn't know what to believe. She always had a reason, he said. Work was unfair. Life was unfair. Someone had cheated her first. But somehow I was always the one making up the difference. Then he told us something that made my skin prickle. There had been missing cash at his job once too. The timing lined up with a loan he'd given her off the books. It almost landed on me, he said. That's when I realized she'd drag anyone down if it meant staying afloat another month. Later, Harper called Derek, the guy from the hotel, to confirm what she already knew. He filled in the gaps, the missing tips, the short registers, the quiet meeting where management offered Brielle the chance to leave without an official mark on her record. We just didn't want the scandal, he admitted. Looking back, maybe we should have pushed harder. When Harper hung up, she looked wrecked. "I thought I was protecting her," she said. "I was just helping her keep going long enough to hurt someone else." "Your loyalty isn't the problem," I told her. "Who you give it to is." Despite everything, Raymond and Carol didn't pull away from us. If anything, they leaned in. They invited my mom and Ray over for a quieter dinner this time, with no empty chair waiting. They made it clear Brielle's choices were hers. Their respect for me, for us, was separate. Harper apologized more than she needed to. "I kept hoping if I covered for her long enough, she'd become the person I was defending," she said one night. "Instead, I handed her more room to hurt people." "I don't need you to be perfect," I said. "I just need to know that when the story gets twisted, you'll stand on the side of what's true." You did that. One evening, my phone rang with a number I recognized too well. I almost didn't answer. When I did, Brielle's voice came through smaller, but still edged. "I don't have anyone else," she said. "Lend me some money. I swear I'll change this time." She brought up my childhood, how we'd both grown up scraping, by how I should understand better than anyone what it meant to be desperate. The words were aimed straight at the oldest wound I had. For a second, I almost slipped. Then I pictured her standing over Ray's chair, sliding that wallet into the tote. "I do understand," I said. "And that's exactly why I'm done. You don't need another person to pull under. You need to face what you've done. I can't be part of this anymore." She swore at me, then hung up. A few weeks later, we heard through a mutual acquaintance that she'd left Austin. Maybe Phoenix, maybe Dallas. No one knew for sure. Raymond and Carol decided not to chase updates. If she wants to come back into our lives, Raymond said she can come with honesty or not at all. Our wedding day came on a clear morning at a small church near Barton Springs. Ray rolled down the aisle as my attendant, flowers in her lap, grin blazing. Mom sat in the front row, eyes shining. Raymond and Carol stood with Harper, their faces a mix of joy and something quieter, like people who'd learned the hard way what love costs when you refuse to see the truth. There was one empty seat near the back. No one mentioned it. For the first time, it didn't feel like a loss. It felt like space. Afterward, Harper and I settled into a modest house in Round Rock. We visited my mom and Ray on weekends, brought dinner to her parents some Sundays. One night, Harper took my hand and set it on her stomach. Eyes bright. "There's a heartbeat," she whispered. I thought about the kid who'd grow up calling us mom and dad. I couldn't promise them a world without people like Brielle. But I could promise them a home where lies don't get to write the story. Sometimes when the house is quiet, my mind drifts back to that night at the lane table, the word thief hanging in the air, my laugh cutting through it. Ray's voice pulling everything back to reality. It still stings. But it also marks the line where everything changed. Family, I've learned, isn't the people who share your blood and your last name. It's the ones who, when someone tries to slap the worst label on you, stand up and say, "No, I know who he is." The rest, Brielle's wallet, the unpaid meals, the slammed door, is just background noise to that one truth. Looking back now, I realize that night at the Lane dining table didn't just expose one person's lie, it exposed years of fear. I had carried old wounds I thought I'd outgrown, and the quiet strength of the people who truly loved me. It forced me to face something I never wanted to admit. Sometimes the hardest part of building a family isn't the wedding planning, the merging of finances, or the blending of different upbringings. Sometimes it's accepting that family can also mean people who cause the deepest cuts and hide them beneath excuses, charm, and familiarity. And sometimes protecting yourself doesn't look like forgiveness. It looks like distance. That night when Brielle screamed "filthy thief" in front of everyone, something inside me cracked open. Not because I believed a single word she said, but because for a split second it felt like I was 7 years old again, standing beside Mom while she paid another late bill, hoping no one would accuse us of something we didn't do because we couldn't afford the consequences. I didn't just laugh because it was absurd. I laughed because I suddenly understood how life can repeat old fears in new costumes and how easily we can forget our own resilience until the moment we need it. What I didn't expect was the wave of clarity that followed. Seeing Harper stand beside me, Ray speak up for me, Raymond and Carol look me in the eye and apologize. It reminded me that the people who truly matter don't get confused by accusations or theatrics. They don't step back when things get messy. They lean forward. They look for truth. And even if that truth hurts, they choose to face it. In the days after, when the dust settled, I found myself thinking about how many people carry the same kind of scars I do: fear of being blamed, fear of being misunderstood, fear of being seen as less than because of where they came from or what they survived. And how many people swallow their boundaries just to keep the peace with someone who has no intention of protecting them in return. It took one chaotic dinner for me to realize that boundaries aren't walls, they're doors. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself or for someone else is close a door that should have been closed a long time ago. There were moments when I wondered if walking away from Brielle made me cold. But then I remembered every manipulation, every guilt trip, every dollar she expected me to hand over without question, every time she used Harper's love as a shield, every time she leaned on my past to make her choices look inevitable. And I understood something quietly: freeing compassion doesn't mean surrender. You can hope someone changes without offering yourself as the price of that change. You can wish someone healing without letting them break you to get there. Now when I sit in the living room of our little house in Round Rock watching Harper doze off on the couch, or when Ray sends me pictures of a new design she's proud of, or when Mom calls asking if we're free Sunday, I feel something I didn't always have the luxury to feel: peace. And it's not the glossy storybook kind. It's the kind you earn after surviving something difficult. The kind that feels quiet and sturdy. The kind that reminds you that sometimes life gives you storms not to drown you but to clear out people who were only ever going to drag you under. And if you're listening to this right now, wherever you are, whatever storm you might be facing, I hope you let yourself believe that you deserve that kind of peace too. I hope you let yourself believe that saying enough is not selfish, it's necessary. I hope you know that loyalty shouldn't cost you your self-respect, and love shouldn't feel like walking on glass. And if someone in your life keeps pulling you into chaos, using your empathy as leverage, or blaming you for their choices, you are allowed to walk away. You're allowed to choose yourself. You're allowed to protect the future you're building. Before I wrap this up, can I ask you something small but meaningful? If you're still here with me, still listening, still breathing with the rhythm of this story, would you drop a quick listening, or just tell me where you're watching from? Maybe it's late where you are. Maybe the room is dim and quiet. Maybe it's cold outside. Or maybe you're on a lunch break somewhere looking for something that makes you feel less alone. Whatever the moment looks like for you, I'd love to know you're there. Stories feel different when someone is on the other side really hearing them. And if this story touched something in you even a little, consider hitting that subscribe button. Not because of an algorithm, not because it's expected, but because it helps this small corner of the internet stay alive for people who need a place to breathe, to feel understood, or to hear a story that mirrors a piece of their own. Your presence here matters more than you think. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Really.